स्ट्राइक करने से भी हमको ही प्रॉब्लम है, स्ट्राइक ना करने से भी हमको ही प्रॉब्लम है.
And yet, more than 2 lakh delivery workers across the country participated in the flash strikes on the 25th and 31st of December to demand better pay and an end of 10-minute deliveries. The voices that you just heard saying strike or no strike, we lose either way, were two Blinkit delivery workers from Bangalore. And they knew about the nationwide strike, they supported it, but they chose not to participate.
आईडी ब्लॉक करके भेज देते हैं.
Soon after these strikes, the delivery platforms allegedly came down heavily on gig workers who participated in them. They simply blocked their IDs, and that is kind of permanent. Here is what happens.
एक बार आईडी बंद हो गया तो उससे आधार कार्ड पैन कार्ड से दूसरी आईडी नहीं बन सकती है, क्योंकि आधार कार्ड पैन कार्ड एक ही बार लिंक रहता है.
इसमें एक ही बार लिंक रहता है. दूसरी आईडी में काम करना बोले तो सेल्फी पूछता है ऐप में, वो सेल्फी नहीं डालने पर भी आईडी फ्रीज हो जाती है.
Once an account is frozen, it stays frozen. Because these apps are linked to Aadhaar and need photo verification, so you simply can't create another login and start again. Which is why I think asking whether the strike was a success or not missed something quite fundamental. In the days following the protests, much of the public conversation has been focused on outcomes without really accounting for the cost gig workers face for simply participating. In fact, even for the ones who chose not to participate, first the incentives were better than usual.
31 तारीख को हर ऑर्डर पर मॉर्निंग सेशन में दिया 30 रुपया, बाद में लंच सेशन को दिया 50 रुपया और डिनर सेशन को दिया 100 रुपया पर ऑर्डर. लेकिन किसी ने 5-10-15 मिनट के लिए जल्दी ये ड्यूटी ऑफ किया तो पूरा का पूरा पैसा हजम कर लिया उन लोगों ने. ये लोग है. हाँ, अगर तुम इंसेंटिव देता है तो पर ऑर्डर पे तो वो वापस कैसे ले सकता है.
This audibly agitated delivery worker that I spoke to in Goa told me that on strike days, some platforms increased incentives for those who continued working. But the catch was time. If a worker logged off even for 15 minutes, the entire incentive for the day disappeared. So, all of this really goes on to show pretty clearly how these platforms look at the strikes. Soon after the December protests, Zomato CEO Dipinder Goyal referred to workers who participated as miscreants on a social media post. That is a strange word to use for his own workers, don't you think? Because a strike is a collective action by workers. So calling those workers miscreants reduces them to just troublemakers. And then what happens is that the conversation moves away from why so many people logged off in the first place. In this episode, I spoke to delivery workers and the leader of the Gig Workers Union about the promise of 10-minute deliveries, how it is sold, who needs it, and why the idea of it may be doing far more damage than we are willing to admit. Welcome to Daybreak, a business podcast from the Ken. I'm your host Snigdha Sharma, and I don't chase the news cycle. Instead, every day of the week, my colleague Rachel Varghese and I will come to you with one business story that is worth understanding and worth your time. Today is Thursday, the 8th of January.
कुछ भी नहीं कर सकते मैडम, इनकम चाहिए तो थोड़ा मेहनत करना पड़ेगा.
हाँ. यहाँ पे कोई डिग्री वगैरह पूछता नहीं, बिना डिग्री के पैसा मिल रहा है तो ऐसे ही मिलता.
For most of the workers that I spoke to, delivery work was not really a choice. It was the only option to survive in the big city. These platforms do not ask them for degrees or for work experience. All they need is a phone and a vehicle, and they can log in and start making money. And that is also why gig work is often talked about in India as flexibility, as opportunity, and sometimes even as a response to the country's job crisis. But workers describe it very differently. None of them describe the 14, 15-hour work days, riding through traffic, climbing stairs, carrying heavy packages, dealing with angry customers as something that they wanted to be doing, especially for what the work now pays.
हो गया 6 मंथ से ज़्यादा हो गया.
अर्निंग कम हो गया.
हाँ, अभी कम हो गया.
किस हिसाब में, मतलब किस में कम हुआ है?
अभी हो गया 35 हो गया. पहले मिलता था हमको 50 रुपीज़.
35 rupees
दो
for
तीन-
one delivery.
हाँ
2 kilometers, 9
पहले
minutes.
इसका मिलता था 45 से 50 तक मिलता था.
And when their earnings start falling, there is very less room for them to slow down. And even basic breaks start to feel negotiable. Listen to this.
एक बार कल हुआ ना, कल वो खाना खा रहे थे हम, 1 बज गया था, सुबह से कुछ नहीं खाए थे, खाना खा रहे थे, तो उसका ऑर्डर थोड़ा लेट हो गया। हम बोले सर खाना खा रहे हैं, आ रहे हैं थोड़ा देर में। जैसे ऑर्डर लेके गए, बोला अब तुमको पता चलेगा, कंप्लेंट कर दिया हूँ। बहुत गुस्सा होकर बोल रहा था। हम बोले सर सॉरी सर, खाना खा रहे थे, भूख लगा था। पर बोला नहीं, तुम खाना खाओगे हम भूखा रहेंगे, ऐसे गुस्सा होकर बोल रहा था। काफ़ी कुछ बोला। हम लोग क्या कर सकते हैं, परदेसी हैं भाई।
That was a Swiggy Instamart worker who moved to Bangalore from Bihar less than a year ago. He told me he had not eaten all morning on that particular day. And when he finally stopped for food around 1 in the afternoon, his delivery ran late and the customer was angry. Now, he is still learning Kannada, which makes moments like this quite hard for him to explain. Every day, quick delivery workers need to fulfill a target number of deliveries. And if they don't meet it, their earnings take a hit.
तो जो 35 का होता है ना टारगेट, तो वो पूरा करने के बाद 500 रुपये 500 इंसेंटिव मिलता है।
अच्छा।
जैसे अभी टारगेट पूरा नहीं कर पाते हैं हम लोग, सिंगल ऑर्डर आता है, नहीं कर पाते हैं।
The thing is, the 10-minute delivery promise came up in a very crowded market. Competition in the food and grocery delivery business was intense. Money was pouring in from all directions, and platforms were slowly losing ways to differentiate themselves from one another. Which is how speed became the differentiator. It is easy to advertise, easy to measure, and easy to believe in. Nobody asked for it really, but it didn't take us very long to feel like it was progress. Shorter wait times, smoother deliveries. I mean, we can now even choose not to see the person who is bringing us our things. Leave it at the doorstep is an option on these apps. Plus, there is the whole thrill of it, getting an AC or an iPhone delivered in 10 minutes. So, you see, we got used to it very quickly. 10-minute became the new normal, and then it was expected. And once that expectation sets in, slowing down starts to feel like failure, even if nothing about the product itself has changed. So, what really is the cost of this speed that we have gotten so used to?
एक इंसिडेंट हैदराबाद तेलंगाना के अंदर एक्सीडेंट हुआ। अभी तक 5-6वां दिन है आज तक जो है उनको इंश्योरेंस मिला नहीं। वो सीरियस कंडीशन में हॉस्पिटल में पड़े हुए हैं। अभी तक जोमेटो वहाँ पे रीच ही हुआ नहीं। मैंने ट्विटर पे @TGPW पे डाल चुका हूँ। उसका कोई सवाल का जवाब नहीं है। जितना 10 मिनट का डिलीवरी पहुँच रहा, क्या फिर उतना 10 मिनट के अंदर उसका इंश्योरेंस भी वहाँ पे पहुँचना चाहिए, मगर क्यों नहीं पहुँच रहा, सबसे बड़ा सवाल है। और उसमें उन्होंने 100 करोड़ रुपए खर्चा किए इंश्योरेंस के ऊपर। तो क्या फ़ायदा वो इंश्योरेंस का? वही हकीकत बताना चाह रहे हैं हम आप लोग को।
That was Sheikh Salaluddin. You have heard him on Daybreak before. He is the founder and the president of the Telangana Gig and Platform Workers Union. And he was talking about a delivery worker who was injured in an accident while on duty. Sheikh Bhai actually put it quite simply. He said if deliveries can be completed in 10 minutes, then why not things like compensation and insurance? All of the 6 workers that I spoke to for this episode echoed the same about accident insurances. One told me, in fact, that another worker quite close to where I live in Bangalore got stabbed while delivering, and he had to wait for days and go through all kinds of bureaucracies to get his insurance money.
अभी कुछ हो गया समझो, बोलेगा तुम नहीं था, तुम्हारा ये नहीं है, तुम्हारा आधार कार्ड का नंबर सही नहीं है, कुछ भी बोल के निकल देगा, रिजेक्ट कर देगा। तो ऐसा क्लेम हुआ 2-3 बार हमारे शॉप में, लेकिन किसी को भी पैसा नहीं आया।
So here's the thing. Accidents happen all the time and in many kinds of jobs. It is the imbalance that is the issue. You saw it everywhere in the story, in the fear around striking, in the long hours, the skipped meals, and how insurance drags on even though deliveries are measured in minutes. Delivery work is going to exist, convenience is not going anywhere, but it is about how much pressure gets packed into the system when speed becomes the main purpose. The 10-minute delivery sits on top of a gig economy where workers are still treated as contractors and where basic protections are not in place for them. Support usually arrives late if it arrives at all. Now, there have been some moves to recognize gig workers in law through the Social Security Bill, and yes, that matters. But recognition has yet translated into everyday security. Accidents, falling pay, and penalties still land on workers first. The 10-minute delivery promise does not create these problems, but it makes them harder to ignore and leaves very little room to slow down and think about how all of this is playing out. What we should think about is what kind of work has to exist to make this 10-minute delivery possible and whether we are comfortable letting that become the new normal.
Daybreak is produced from the newsroom of The Ken, India's first subscriber-focused business news platform. What you're listening to is just a small sample of our subscriber-only offerings, and a full subscription offers daily, long-form feature stories, newsletters, and a whole bunch of premium podcasts. To subscribe, head to theken.com and click on the red subscribe button on the top of the website. Today's episode was hosted and produced by my colleague Snigdha Sharma and edited by Rajiv CN.